The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air, thick as the silence between father and son. The old house, with its wood-paneled walls and faded curtains, had heard many arguments over the years, but never one like this. Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words slid across the kitchen table like shards of glass. "You wasted your life, Dad, and now you want to waste what little you have left." Buford Ruiz sat in his chair, spine straight despite the sting. His hands, calloused from 4 decades at the factory, rested on a folder packed with neatly typed pages. Business plans, menu concepts, the dream he had carried in secret since youth. He had hoped, that revealing it to his son might spark a conversation. Instead, it had detonated something raw. Michael leaned back in his tailored suit, confidence hanging on him like armor. His briefcase rested at his side, a symbol of the career he guarded like a fortress. To him, his father's ideas were nothing more than cracks in the foundation. "You're 68, Michael continued, voice cool and cutting. "You should be winding down, not chasing fairy tales. Don't drag the family's name into embarrassment." Buford's jaw tightened. He could hear the echo of his late wife's laugh in the walls, could almost see Maria shaking her head at the way their son dismissed the very man who raised him. Dreams had been postponed once for diapers, then again for tuition, then again for mortgage payments. But now, with Maria gone and the factory behind him, there were no more reasons to postpone. His throat felt dry, but his voice came steady. "I'm not asking your permission, Michael. I'm telling you, I'm opening a cafe." Michael let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head as if the old man had told a joke. He reached across the table and tapped the folder with 2 fingers. This is desperation disguised as ambition. Do yourself a favor. Tear it up before you embarrass yourself. Before you embarrass me." The folder trembled under Buford's hand, but he didn't pull it back. He let the sting of the words sink into him, let them burn until they ignited something stronger. His voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. "You think I'm a failure because I chose stability over chasing dreams when you were little. But the truth is, I gave you the life you stand on now. If you can't see that, it's not my failure. It's yours." For a moment, the 2 men stared at each other, neither blinking, the air thick with a history of sacrifices unspoken. Outside, the winter wind rattled the window panes, as if reminding them both how fragile walls could be. Buford stood, gathered the folder, and walked out of the kitchen without waiting for a reply. The chair scraped against the tile with a finality that left Michael in silence. Dreams, Buford thought as he stepped into the cold morning, don't die just because someone refuses to believe in them. The cold air stung Buford's cheeks as he stepped out into the street. His boots crunched against patches of ice still clinging to the sidewalk, but the sting in his chest was sharper than the winter wind. He clutched the folder tighter, as if it were more than paper, as if it were armor. For the first time in decades, he wasn't walking towards someone else's time clock. He wasn't heading into the factory gates with a thermos and a lunch pail. He was walking into uncertainty, and that felt terrifyingly alive. At the corner, the old River Street storefront came into view, peeling paint, cracked windows, a sagging awning with the faded outline of letters long gone. Most people saw decay. Buford saw possibility. He pressed his hand against the cold glass, imagining laughter spilling from inside, coffee steam fogging the panes, music playing softly over clinking dishes. For a heartbeat, it was real. Behind him, the memory of Maria's voice rose up, as clear as if she were standing there. "One day, Buf, one day you'll open that place you keep sketching on napkins." She had said it so many times, back when their kitchen table was cluttered with bills and baby bottles. He'd smiled and nodded, then tucked those sketches away because diapers and mortgages didn't wait for someday. Now, someday had arrived, and she wasn't here to see it. The thought hollowed him but also hardened his resolve. The jangle of the realtor's keys broke his reverie. A brisk woman in a navy coat approached, offering a professional smile. "Mr. Ruiz? I'm Linda, ready to take a look inside." Inside smelled of dust and abandonment. Floorboards creaked under his weight. A single fluorescent tube flickered weakly overhead. But Buford paced the room like a man tracing sacred ground. 30 tables here. Coffee counter there. Upstairs storage for supplies. He pulled a measuring tape from his coat and stretched it across the wall, jotting notes into the margins of his plan. Linda's voice cut through. This space will take work. A lot of work. Electrical, plumbing, flooring. Renovations like this don't come cheap. I've spent 43 years keeping machines alive that should have been scrap, Buford said quietly. I know the difference between broken and neglected. This place isn't broken. She studied him for a moment, as though trying to measure the line between determination and delusion. Then she simply nodded. Later that night, back at his kitchen table, Buford spread his papers out once again. The sting of Michael's dismissal still clung to him, sharper now in the silence. He smoothed a photo of Maria tucked inside the folder. She was smiling in the snapshot, one hand on his shoulder, the other balancing a mixing bowl. They had been younger, full of unfinished dreams. He whispered to the picture, voice raw. This time, I'm not stopping. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. And in that stillness, Buford began rewriting not just numbers, but his life. The bank lobby gleamed like a place designed to intimidate. Marble floors, polished brass railings, and the faint scent of cologne from a dozen gray-suited professionals passing through. Buford stood near the reception desk, hat in hand, folder tucked tightly under his arm. His best jacket felt stiff across his shoulders, though the tailor had insisted it fit. When his name was called, he followed a young lending officer into an office lined with framed certificates. She smiled politely, but her eyes flicked to his age lines before the papers. So, Mr. Ruiz, she began, sliding his application across the desk. You're requesting a business loan of $150,000 for a cafe? Yes, ma'am. He opened the folder, laying out profit projections, renovation estimates, even sketches of the space. Each page was crisp, each number double-checked. Comfort food with a Mexican touch. Family recipes, fresh ingredients. Riverside doesn't have anything like it. She scanned the sheets, nodding here and there, then set them down with a sigh that felt heavier than the stack itself. Your plan is thorough, but at your age, lenders see risk. Retirement funds should be preserved, not gambled. We can't approve this application. The words struck like a hammer. Buford swallowed, his mouth suddenly dry. Not even with my house as collateral? Her expression softened, but the answer didn't change. I'm sorry, Mr. Ruiz. It's policy. He gathered the papers slowly, each movement deliberate so his hands wouldn't show their tremor. By the time he walked back into the sunlight, the folder felt heavier than steel. That evening, Michael appeared at his door without calling. His son didn't even step inside. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, smirk faint but present. Heard you went to the bank today. They turned you down, didn't they? Buford froze in the doorway. You've been asking around? Michael shrugged. Small town. Word travels. I warned you, Dad. No one's going to hand a 70-year-old man a six-figure loan for a pipe dream. It's embarrassing. The urge to slam the door was strong, but Buford held his ground. You think I need their permission? You think I'll quit because a clerk said no? You should. Michael's voice dropped to a hiss. Because if you don't, I'll do whatever it takes to protect what's left of this family's name. The threat hung there, heavier than any bank denial. For a moment, father and son locked eyes, two men on opposite sides of a battle neither had asked for but both were bound to fight. When Michael finally left, tires squealing into the night, Buford walked back to the kitchen table. The papers lay there, edges frayed now from use. He stared at them until his vision blurred, until the numbers no longer mattered. Failure had always been his son's word. Tonight, it echoed in his own skull. Yet beneath the ache, a small ember refused to die. He pressed a hand flat on the folder, whispering into the silence. If the door won't open, I'll find another way in. And for the first time, the dream didn't feel fragile. It felt like defiance. Rain hammered the cracked windows of the River Street storefront as Buford stood inside, staring at the skeletal remains of a cafe not yet born. The walls were half-painted, electrical wires dangled loose, and a stack of unpaid invoices sat like a storm on the counter. Each paper bore a red stamp, past due. He had drained most of his savings into the down payment and early renovations. The denied loan had forced him to stretch every dollar until it screamed. His pension checks went to contractors, paint, and second-hand kitchen equipment. Nights were quieter now, filled with the steady ache of wondering if Michael was right. The sound of the door creaking open jolted him. Anna, the single mother he'd hired for prep work and cleaning, stepped inside, shaking water from her umbrella. "Mr. Ruiz, you're still here. It's almost midnight." "I couldn't sleep," he muttered, running a hand across his damp forehead. "Figured I'd finish painting before the inspector comes." Anna glanced at the bills on the counter. She didn't speak at first, just took the brush from his hand and dipped it into the bucket. "You're building more than a cafe," she said softly, dragging bold strokes across the wall. "You're building a chance for yourself, for people like me. Don't forget that." Her words struck deeper than she knew. For weeks, Buford had told himself this dream was about proving Michael wrong. But staring at Anna, her tired eyes, her determination, he realized it was also about proving something right. That life after 60 wasn't just a waiting room for death. 2 days later, Michael stormed into the half-renovated cafe. His expensive shoes splashed through puddles left by a leaky roof. "Dad, enough. You've gone too far." He slapped a folder onto the counter. "Legal documents. These are competency papers. If you don't stop, I'll have you declared unfit to manage your own finances." Buford froze. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, illuminating every line of exhaustion on his face. "You'd take me to court? Your own father." Michael's voice was cold, almost rehearsed. "I'd rather humiliate you in a courtroom than watch you lose everything Mom and you built." She'd never forgive this madness. The mention of Maria was a knife. Buford gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. "Don't you dare use her memory as your shield. She believed in me when no one else did." For a moment, silence filled the room, punctuated only by the drip-drip of water into a rusted bucket. Michael looked away first, but not in surrender. "Sign the papers, Dad, or I'll make sure the court signs them for you." When he left, the cafe seemed smaller, its walls pressing in like accusations. Buford sat on the dusty floor, the legal documents sprawled in front of him. Every line felt like chains, every clause a reminder that the world believed he was too old, too foolish, too broken to rise. Yet as the rain eased outside, he whispered to himself, "If they think age is weakness, let them watch what it can build." The storm had passed, but the war was only beginning. The morning air carried the sharp bite of spring, crisp enough to sting the lungs. Buford unlocked the front door of the cafe with fingers that trembled. Not from age, but from the weight of everything riding on this day. For months, he had lived on the edge of ruin. Bills stacked, contractors questioned his resolve. His son threatened him with court papers. And yet here he was, key turning in the lock of a dream that had outlived ridicule. Inside, the cafe was no longer a hollow shell. Golden light spilled across polished wood tables. Fresh paint glowed warm against the walls. The smell of coffee and cornbread filled the air, blending into something that felt like hope given form. Anna straightened her apron at the counter, while young Tommy nervously adjusted plates behind the kitchen window. Buford inhaled deeply. Let them come, he thought. 8 o'clock arrived. The bell above the door stayed silent. By 9, the coffee grew bitter in its pot. Anna polished counters that didn't need polishing. Tommy peeked through the window, brows furrowed. Each passing minute carved doubt deeper into Buford's chest. At 10, he whispered it, the words he had refused for months. Maybe Michael was right. The front door opened then, a hesitant creak. An elderly couple shuffled inside, hand in hand. "We saw your sign," the woman said, voice bright. "Smelled the food all the way down the street." Buford's heart lurched. He guided them to a table himself, pouring coffee with hands steadier than he expected. As Anna took their order, more footsteps followed. A young mother with 2 children. A group of office workers. By 11, nearly every table was filled, voices rising in warm conversation. And then the impossible happened. The door burst open and Michael stood there. His suit was gone, replaced with a wrinkled shirt, his tie hanging loose. His briefcase was missing. His eyes, once sharp with judgment, now carried exhaustion and something dangerously close to desperation. He looked around the bustling cafe, at customers laughing over plates of food, at Anna weaving gracefully between tables, at Tommy sending out dishes with practiced precision. It was undeniable. The cafe was alive. Michael approached the counter, ignoring the stares of customers who sensed drama in the air. He lowered his voice, but it carried like thunder in Buford's ears. "Dad, I need your help. I lost my job. I'm behind on the house. Please give me something. Anything." The room hushed. Forks paused midair. Even Anna froze. The silence stretched, unbearable. Buford stared at his son. The same son who had called him a failure, who had tried to strip him of his independence, who now stood small and trembling in the place he swore would never exist. For a moment, Buford's throat ached with the urge to say yes, to save his son from drowning. But another voice rose inside him, the echo of every sacrifice dismissed, every dream deferred. He leaned forward, meeting Michael's eyes. His reply was one word, spoken steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. No, the sound split the air, final as a gavel. Michael's shoulders collapsed, his mouth opening but no words emerging. He turned, walked out, and vanished into the daylight. Buford exhaled slowly, gripping the counter for balance. Around him, life resumed. Cups clinked. Conversations swelled. And for the first time in decades, he felt not like a man surviving, but like a man who had finally chosen himself. Evening settled slowly over River Street, the last streaks of sunlight painting the cafe windows in amber. Buford sat alone in the corner booth after closing, a steaming mug of coffee between his hands. The chairs were stacked, the floor freshly mopped, and the register counted down to the penny. Everything about the room whispered stability, the opposite of what Michael had predicted. Yet peace did not come easily. The image of his son standing in the doorway that morning lingered like smoke. The slumped shoulders, the broken voice, the plea that still hung in the air. "Dad, I need your help." Buford had replayed those words 100 times since. Anna emerged from the kitchen, apron folded neatly over her arm. "We made good numbers today," she said, almost shyly. "Better than last week. The customers, they're starting to feel like family." Buford smiled faintly. "That's the point, isn't it?" She hesitated, then asked the question he knew was coming. "Do you think you were too hard on him?" Buford didn't answer right away. He stared into the dark swirl of coffee, as if the answer might rise from the steam. Finally, he said, "Hard is what he called me when I made him mow the lawn, study for tests, show respect to his mother. Hard is what he called me when I worked overtime to keep food on the table. Maybe he's right. Maybe I've always been hard. But I've also always been steady. And steady is what built this." Anna nodded, though her eyes carried a softness that suggested disagreement. She left him to his thoughts, locking up on her way out. The cafe fell silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Buford leaned back against the booth, letting the stillness settle into him. On the wall across from him hung a framed photograph he had placed there on opening day. Maria in her apron, laughing at something off camera. Her hair pulled back the way she wore it when she cooked. He raised his mug toward her. "We did it, Maria. They all said it was too late, but we did it." The clock above the counter ticked past midnight. Outside, the street was empty except for the glow of the cafe sign, letters shining against the dark. Buford's dream. For the first time, the name didn't feel like boast or defiance. It felt like a promise fulfilled. Not to Michael, not even to the community, but to himself, the younger version who had once sketched menus on scrap paper, who had packed those sketches away for diapers and bills, who had almost believed he'd lost his chance forever. A faint ache tugged at him, knowing the fracture with his son might never heal, that his no had been both justice and punishment. But he also understood something deeper. Some wounds must remain visible like scars to remind us what it costs to stand tall. He drained the last of his coffee, set the mug down, and turned off the lights. The sign outside still glowed against the night. Dreams, he thought, don't expire. They wait, and when you finally answer them, they echo loud enough to drown out every voice that ever called you a failure.